Hey everyone, Joshua Gibson here, and you're listening to episode 41 of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to the show's sponsor, BarShield. BarShield created a maintenance kit designed to prevent rust and restore spin to a barbell's sleeves. The kit comes with a nylon brush, an 8-ounce bottle of anti-rust, anti-wear lubricant, and 3 microfiber towels. It also comes with a simple set of instructions which will have you well on your way to perfectly spinning beautiful bars. My discount code, PWPodcast, will get you 10% off your entire purchase. It will also help me to continue producing great podcasts with amazing guests. Head over to barshieldUSA.com, go pick up a maintenance kit, and get your bars looking and spinning like new. That's it for the intro. Now let's get on to this week's podcast with Glenn Pendlay. And we are live. Today I'm joined by the one and only Glenn Pendlay. Everyone listening to this podcast should know who Glenn is. And if you don't, you're probably living under a rock and aren't able to listen to this anyway. So, Glenn, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So, how's Kansas? Can you give me an update?
Well, it's like it always is in the summer. It's hot and windy. In the winter, it's cold and windy. But yeah, Kansas is the same way it always has been. It's hot and miserable.
Yeah.
I always said that Kansas has the worst summers and the worst winters anywhere I've ever lived.
And you lived on each side of the United States, so you've been exposed to it all.
And I lived in north, up in Montana, and I lived in the south in Texas for 20 years. But Kansas still has, there's a few weeks every year when Kansas is hotter even than Texas. I mean, it's just miserably hot. A little bit of humidity and just hot. I think, yeah. So, but the other thing is in Texas, the summers last so long. That's the main problem in Texas, but they just last forever. But in Kansas, luckily, the winters aren't super long, summers aren't super long, but each one of them is miserable when they're here.
Yeah, short and sweet.
Yeah.
Does it get very humid in Kansas as compared to like Texas, which is more of a dry heat?
Yes. Well, in Texas, it kind of depends on where you are, but Kansas is more humid than Texas for sure. It's not Louisiana humid, but you know that's New Orleans. That's like a whole other country.
Yeah, I actually lived in Mississippi for a bit of my childhood, and the humidity is something just unreal.
We're just going to say I'm sorry. You know, I don't have anything against Mississippi at all. I know some people that are from Mississippi that are super, super great people. But I will say that Mississippi and New Orleans, basically, both are miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable in the summer.
Yeah, they're a different world. I think people, they get used to living in the north, but once you travel down south, it's just everything is different.
Right, it is. Louisiana, Mississippi, probably Alabama.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Those are 3 states I wouldn't want to live in, not for any reason besides the weather.
Yeah. I
mean, I just don't want to live there because I don't want to be there when it's hot and miserable and humid and just miserable.
Right.
I mean, they're nice places. They're great places. But I don't want to be in that heat.
Yeah, so anyway. I'm curious to hear about the new gym that's opened up. So how is that? How do you like it?
Well, I've got to say so far, I'm kind of missing the old one. But that's not for any reason like the new one's not as good. It's nice. But they're just getting it together.
Okay.
So far, you know where in the old gym we had the whole big row of platforms was kind of our side of the building, the weightlifting side.
Yeah.
And the crossovers are in the middle, and on the other side, we don't quite have that yet here because it just isn't moved around yet to be in the right place and be set. By the time you end up getting here for the winter camp, we're going to have a whole corner of the gym for weightlifting and several platforms. It's going to be really nice, I think. I really think it's going to be nice. I'm better than the old gym by far.
Yeah, and just to bring everyone up to speed, this is Mactown CrossFit. This is where, Glenn, you've been coaching since you came back to Kansas.
Yes.
So are you guys planning on expanding the weightlifting area at all, or are you just going to kind of leave it to the 4 platforms? And
I hope that we will have 6 platforms eventually. But for the time being, it's 4. But I'm hopeful that we'll eventually have 6.
Okay, awesome. And then I also kind of wanted to see how American weightlifting was doing.
It's not doing bad. I mean, it's not breaking any records, I don't think, for sales, but it's steady. I keep selling a bar here and a bar there and a set of plates. Rodrigo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, from the Pendlay wad.
He bought 3 competition sets. I'm sure you've seen a couple of videos that he's shot with him already. Yeah. So we've had a lot of sales like that, just little stuff. But, I'm honestly not really mad about that. It's kind of worked out good because I don't really have things set up well enough now to handle if I got 40 orders in a day, And so as I'm slowly getting things worked out as far as processing orders, doing the shipping, this and that and the other, they're slowly coming in. But I can honestly say I'm glad it's not started faster. I don't want to be slower, but I'm glad it's not started in a rush. So I'm happy with it.
When you started your first barbell company, was it did it kind of go in a similar trajectory where it was slower and then there was like a tipping point?
No, it didn't. And that ended up being a bad thing. I went from selling 1 bar a week to selling 100 bars a week.
Jeez.
In 3 days, basically. No, that's an exaggeration, but basically we went from 0 to 100 and nothing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for it. I didn't have things set up for it. I was kind of learning as I went. And it just was not doable for me. And that's why I eventually sold to Muscle Driver.
Yeah.
Which is a horrendous decision. I mean, if I go back and change one thing in my life, it would be that. But that's what started because I didn't want to be a person that was shipping bars all the time. Mm-hmm. I wanted to coach weightlifting. And the bars started getting so big that I was losing my ability to coach because I was just too busy. Couldn't go to the gym and coach Caleb Ward and guys like that. And so I ended up selling out to Muscle Driver because I wanted to get back to coaching, and they offered me a pretty good deal. And so I did.
Yeah. Well,
of course, if I go back and change that, I would do it in a minute.
Yeah. And American weightlifting may be kind of going along slowly and steadily, but I feel like the Pendlay wad is really taken off. I think there's the last time I checked, we had 190 members on the online team. So that seems like it's growing pretty well. And a lot of people are hitting big PRs, which is always great.
I'm kind of the most excited about people doing well. Mm-hmm. I know I'm not at heart a business person because when you talk about the Pendlay wad or the American weightlifting doing well, what I always focus on is we have lifters making PRs.
Yeah.
We have guys that had a 160 total doing 165, mm-hmm. or a 260 total doing 265. I mean, that's what gets me excited. That's the only thing that gets me excited. And because we do have that going on right now, like yesterday was a monster day. Trying to think of who actually PR'd yesterday.
I think a guy named Matt snatched 125.
Yeah, Matt. Is it Matt Scott?
I think Matt Jones or something like that.
Matt Jones. Yeah, Matt Jones. I'm terrible with names. But Matt actually did that's a monster lift for him because he was stuck in the, I think, lower 120s for a long time, and he hadn't snatched anything but above or past that, his PR, from any position. You know?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people have a 120 snaps to the floor, 122, mid thigh, et cetera, et cetera. But he'd not done anything besides heavier than his max in any position. And he went 25, and then he got greedy and tried 55, jumped straight from 51 to 55, and he jerked it. He jerked it. And as he was bringing his feet back together, it came down.
Yeah.
But that thing was a done lift. That's as close as you can get to a lift as possible. And that would have been a monster PR, a 280 PR, which for him, he's struggling to hold 270.
Yeah.
So that was a monster day for him.
So Matt's doing really well, and I noticed Tyler Barnes. He's so strong. He's just going off.
Yeah, he's I guys like him, I'm like, I really hope he sticks with it. He probably will when things get hard. I don't want to like create a situation here by thinking about it until I make it happen. But yet, when I see people like him, I'm always a little apprehensive because it's almost too good to be true. He's such a nice guy. And then he's going up constantly. Every workout he has new maxes.
Yeah.
I mean, every single workout he's making progress. You know what I wonder is he still going to stick with it once the progress stalls? Because it's going to stall at some point. You know it is.
Yeah.
It does everyone it does. It slows down and stalls. So is he going to get so spoiled making a new snatch and clean jerk PR and squat PR every freaking week, every workout? So spoiled by that, when he has 6 months without a PR, he quits.
Yeah.
That scares me. I mean, but that scares me everybody, you know? I think one of the reasons I like Seb a lot is because he actually went through that.
Yeah.
Like a year or two without a PR. A long time. And he's always been just as enthusiastic about lifting as he was the first day I met him.
Yeah,
he's at his down times, his long stretch without a PR, and yet he stayed enthusiastic about the sport and loving the sport even through that.
Yeah.
And so he's a great guy. But anyways.
Yeah, I think Seb just has the personality to be very resilient in tough times. So, This is a good kind of segue to the topic we wanted to discuss, which is old school versus new school weightlifting. So we're kind of talking about progress and getting stronger. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I look at videos and pictures of lifters from like the 60s and 70s and even 80s before the transition to what I would consider new school weightlifting. And Glenn, I don't know, when would you say we made that transition? Do you think it's like the advent of CrossFit? Do you think it's kind of the emergence of the internet? Like, when do you think we switched from old school to new school?
I think the internet.
Yeah.
CrossFit has helped weightlifting. There's no doubt about that. No doubt. But I don't think people your age even vaguely appreciate the difference having the internet has made in weightlifting. I don't think many people do that are your age.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is when I was young, I'm talking in high school and college, I didn't know what weightlifting was. When I went to college, I went as a powerlifter. Why? Certainly not because powerlifting is a great thing. I liked it, but I liked getting stronger. That was just the whole thing for me. I liked getting stronger. But you couldn't find any information about weightlifting anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In a small town in Kansas, where do you go to find weightlifting if it's not for the internet? There's no YouTube. There's no Facebook. There's no anything. And so that made it extremely tough to find any information about weightlifting. I got into it kind of a back-asserts way because I was a good powerlifter or decent powerlifter. Ended up going to a meet in Moscow in Russia and meeting Medvedev there. And he became my first coach, basically.
Yeah.
Spent a little time there, learned from him, And that's my introduction to sport. But if it wouldn't have been for powerlifting and that trip to Moscow, who knows how long it would have taken me? I might still not be in weightlifting. And I know that's difficult to imagine because you and people of your generation have grown up with the internet. Before the internet, you were kind of left with what is in your town and people you knew, what they were doing. And it wasn't a good situation for weightlifting.
Mm-hmm. But even with that small draw to the sport, because of the inability to kind of market it, we still saw incredible athletes, like incredible weightlifters. So do you think like the talent was just at a higher level? Because obviously the methods of like training and recovery and mobility were all different then to where they all are now.
Well, yeah, that's a whole bunch of questions in one. For one thing, weightlifting has been the same forever. It's been mostly the same since, well, the modern rules were solidified in 1972. Mm-hmm. The modern pull was being used in the 80s. You know, Zakharevich pulled like you pull. Yeah. You know, I mean, so weightlifting has been around for a long time, and the modern technique has been around for a long time. Obviously, people did it different in the 50s, you know, and before that for sure. But it's been around for a long time. It's been done basically the same way it is now for quite a long time. All this recovery stuff and what did you mention, diet stuff, recovery stuff?
Yeah, like mobility, recovery.
Mobility and recovery. That's all. I'm not going to say crap. I was going to say crap, but I'm not going to say crap. But it's not important. It's not important.
Yeah, so like I guess touching on mobility, what did lifters in the 70s and 80s do? Because they had equally as good of bottom positions, they had equally as good of movements and overhead positions. Do you think there was a difference there versus now when we're trying to introduce a lot of like tools, like bands and balls and foam rollers?
You said, what did they do? Well, they did weightlifting. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It's that simple. They snatch and they clean and jerk. That is mobility training. When you do a snatch, if you try to get in the right positions, that's your mobility training. It does you no advantage whatsoever to have the mobility to go beyond what you need in a sport. None at all.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like where I'm drifting with people that I coach is kind of shy away from all of the things that aren't the barbell and you just use the bar for more time before you get started in your workout.
Right. I mean, it seems stupid, but it's true.
Yeah.
You got to snatch to be a good snatcher. You got to clean and jerk to be a good clean and jerker. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah. What I think people have gotten away from is they got more and more sizzle and less steak. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're doing all these things, the voodoo floss, mobility balls. Some people spend as much time rolling around on a ball as they do snatching. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make sense. Is that stuff good? I'm sure it is. I'm sure there's a person here or there that it's helped. I'm confident that's the case. I've used the voodoo floss forever. Mm-hmm. In fact, I did it before they had voodoo floss. I introduced that to Kelly Starrett way back before Rogue was selling that stuff. I used an inner tube, a bicycle inner tube, cut in half into strips to wrap around your knee really tight. But I've never known that. that's how people used to do it. And I believe I used that for a long time before the voodoo floss things became available.
Yeah.
So I use that stuff when it's needed, but people have forgotten that there has been nothing new in the snatch and clean jerk in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
No one's learned a better way to do it. And if you want to know if things like voodoo floss or tennis balls that you can roll on have really helped lifters lift more, I'm going to ask you a stupid question. Have the world records gone up since those things were introduced? Have the American records gone up because of those things?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
No,
of course not. So that answers the question. Did it really help weightlifting? I'm sure it helped somebody here or there, but if the record's not gone up, it has not really helped people lift more in a real way.
Right. And I think you kind of said exactly what needs to be said on it. You said when it's needed. I think a lot of people use it and think it's going to make this huge difference and this long-term change, when in reality, it just makes you feel good for that training session. And I guess whatever makes you feel good or allows you to. It
makes you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah.
That's one of the, when you asked about, modern weightlifting, I'm very tempted to say, the internet. I think I did say the internet, but that's really when I consider if people got smartphones and the internet. That's the modern era to me. Mm-hmm. And the reason that is because people haven't really changed. Their mindset has changed. The biggest thing that's changed about people is people are more impatient now. Mm-hmm. Much more impatient. Because we have social media, people don't realize that it takes a while to get feedback. Mm-hmm. You can go on Facebook in 10 seconds and get 8 people telling you you're great, mm-hmm. or that shirt looks great, or whatever. There's so much feedback from so many people all the time. It's like a mental sickness. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I think people have lost patience because of that.
Yeah, and I think this is like a prime example. I lifted a gym, and a girl just recently started coming there, and she will take a video of her lift, send it to her coach, and get feedback right before she takes the next attempt.
I think that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's pretty ridiculous.
And it's Glenn, I know for you, and this is, again, I'm kind of like developing my approach as I see how you've done it. I want the lifter to be able to take a lift, feel what was wrong. Maybe watch a video, but just understand how to correct it themselves so that they don't have to be so reliant on someone else.
Right. Well, there is a lot of thoughts like that in my book, which I'm finishing up right now. I believe it'll be out by Christmas.
Oh, nice.
But I think every coach has to, when they coach their lifters, they have to basically coach themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
It's how I think about it. I use Caleb Ward as an example on this because it's such a good example, because I started coaching when he was very young. When he was 13 or 12, he was 12 when I started coaching. When he was 12, he would do a lift and look at me like, what I do? How did that look? He didn't even try to think about the lift himself. That's because he was 12. Now you have a whole new generation of lifters that are 25 doing the same thing because they don't know how to think themselves. My big goal with Caleb was to, by the time, and with any lifter they coach, is by the time they're, I've been in a sport 5 years, they're not going to need me anymore. And I think a lot of coaches nowadays who are enabling lifters to just look to the coach for everything.
Yeah.
are doing those lifters a big disservice. That's not a popular idea. In fact, I've been roundly booed in many places by coaches for that idea. Even at Muscle Driver, the other coaches were really, really, you thought I'd ask them to sleep with their sister. It's like something terrible, not just the terrible reaction was not just, oh, that's not a good idea. It was like vehement, like you're going to hell, that's terrible. They were really, really against it. The very idea that any athlete could grow into not needing to coach as much.
Yeah. And I've recognized that a lot of lifters you have produced, and I brought a few on the podcast, like James Tatum, and they all seem to be able to program and lift on their own very well. And James kind of came up under you, and it seems like you developed him into a great coach as well as an athlete.
Well, I can't take advantage. I can't really take credit for that because James is a smart guy.
Yeah.
And he is a good lifter. And James is the kind of person that when I told James something, he'd actually listen and think.
Yeah.
Engage his brain. I can't take credit for that. That's from his parents,
Right.
The other person I coached, recently, well, not recently, but fairly recently, later part of my career, was Travis Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
I think Travis Cooper is probably already one of the best coaches in USA weightlifting. He's still competing, and he's doing it smart. He's trying to get over with his competition career before he starts to actively coach. But he's already coaching a few people.
Mm-hmm.
But he is a smart guy. Kind of like James. I can't take credit for Travis at all because Travis was a good lifter before I coached him, Mm-hmm. But he's a very smart guy. Fantastically smart guy. And if I added anything to his abilities, it might have been a little cherry on top.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that. Nothing more. I'm sure I introduced him to some ideas. Basically, that had to do with several mistakes he was making that I kind of helped him correct. And that, I think, taught him some things, basically, maybe. But Travis is Travis without me. I didn't make Travis. Travis is a great lifter and a great coach, and will be a better coach without me.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of the best coaches in the USA weightlifting, for sure. He is just a very smart guy and a very smart about weightlifting. Yeah,
so with Travis, I remember you saying that you had to change his pull-up a little bit.
Yeah, he was charting the second pull very low on a snatch.
Yeah. So kind of taking that, we can discuss the difference in the pull between quote-unquote old school versus new school. So like a lot of people still focus on developing maybe a unique technique or developing something a little bit different. But like you said, since the 80s, we've had an understanding of what the pull should look like.
Right.
So, do you think there's anything left to know about it, or do you feel like we've pretty much figured it all out?
You know what? That's a loaded question. That is a loaded question. I'm sure every single generation or decade of lifters has said, this is as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because at that point, it was as far as it goes. I'm not even going to get tricked into, because that's basically what we're trying to do, I'm not going to get tricked into saying this is as far as it goes, because I'd be an idiot to believe that.
Yeah, I've heard.
I'm sure there's something new out there that no one, including me, has thought of.
Yeah.
I can see where it's going, I can see where it's going.
I've heard
and competing and technique. It's never going to end. It's never going to end. Things that get better every generation.
Well, I've read some stuff from Sean Waxman, and I've heard him discuss the pull, and he said that since there's so much research on it coming from the 80s, that we pretty much have it figured out. There's really nothing to change.
Well, there's something to be said. I hope you don't misunderstand this, because I'm going to say something really stupid. There's something to be said for socialism.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the economic system, no, it's stupid. It's ridiculously stupid. But in a socialist country like Soviet Union, they put so much effort into looking good because they can't actually do good things because it's just stupid system. So they're never going to have the best cars, have the best clothes, have the best food. They barely have food. Venezuela, for instance, socialist. Of course, people are starving. They're eating their dogs and cats, to survive. That's socialism. But the one thing where they do good is these big things like producing lifters for the Olympics.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of research into it to make them look good on the international stage. And the fact that the USSR put so much research into weightlifting has advanced the sport. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And that's been a big part of weightlifting. They have improved the sport for sure. And that's just, that is all you can say about that.
Yeah. So, I guess being open to change, the technique might develop over time to become something even better. As far as programming goes, what do you think were the main differences between, say, the 70s and the 80s versus the 2000s, 2010s?
Oh, gosh. I think we're not done with programming.
Yeah.
That still has a ways to go. And I don't discount the fact that possibly better programming is going to eventually lead to much improved lifts. Maybe new nuances in how you do a lift that are better. Because, programming is far from done improving. In the 60s, we thought 3 days a week was all you could do. Train hard one day, rest the next. In the 70s and 80s, we got to the point, basically via the Bulgarians, where Ivan Abadjiev was who pushed this. You got to actually train more than 3 times a week. More than once a day. Now we're at the point where countries like that are at the highest reaches of sport, are starting to train much more than once a day or even twice a day. I think Kazakhstan's gone to like 4 workouts a day or something like that.
Yeah.
They getting great, huge frequency. I think that's where it's going because in research on weightlifting and strength training, you've never had a point where doing the same workload, but swinging into 2 workouts a day is worse than 1 workout a day. You've never had any point where more frequency is worse. I'm sure we'll eventually get to that point, but while at Muscle Driver, I actually went to 6 or 8 workouts a day for a while. That actually worked very well. And actually, I couldn't do it as long as I wanted to, but as I finished my doctoral program, that's going to be what we're working on is frequency.
Now, do you think that's something that can be applied to all lifters, or do you feel like there's a special population in there that will respond better to higher frequency training?
Well, I think that there are always people that respond better and people that respond worse. I think with frequency, what I've already seen is that the lighter bodyweight lifters respond better to it, higher frequency. It may be something that, I see this I've just had 1,000 hints over the last 10 years. I don't have any proof of this, but I've had so many hints in my coaching career that I feel like I'm sure enough about it to actually say it, on the podcast. Eventually, we're going to go to a place where if you're a 69 kilo lifter or a 62 kilo lifter, going to be programmed with 6 workouts a day.
Yeah.
If you're 85 or 94, you're going to do 3 workouts a day. If you're a super, you're going to do 2 workouts a day. The frequency is basically modified for how big or small you are.
Right.
I could see that happening because it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense.
And I think that I've already seen that the lighter lifters that I tried to high frequency with, like Mike Zella, it worked really, really freaking well. The lower lifters, the heavier lifters, it didn't work as well for.
So you're kind of discussing like frequency and then body size. So did you ever try this with like Tom Stroka or any of the heavier lifters?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Tom had enough problems doing 2 workouts a day. There wasn't any use in trying more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, training becomes more and more individualized. I feel like as I do this podcast, I mean, there's been several things, like it's almost like I'm repeating a chapter of my book.
Yeah.
But as you advance in training, it becomes more and more individualized. Whereas a beginner, all beginners should do about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real huge difference between beginner A and beginner B. But the longer you train, the more it changes, the more individualized you have to be. Tom had actually trained for a fairly long time because he was a shot putter.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't start in weightlifting. He started in track and field. So he actually had special considerations by the time he got to weightlifting. You know, he had ways that worked for him and ways that didn't. He had to have a more individualized program.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing I think we could consider from old school versus new school that might create a difference in performance would be the equipment. So how much do you think the shoes, the bars, the plates, stuff like that differed from the 60s and 70s to today?
I think the bars were the same
mm-hmm.
from the 70s on. There's no doubt that having a bar that behaves like a weightlifting bar, a modern weightlifting bar, helps. But that has not changed dramatically since the 70s.
Yeah.
And so that the shoes, people had weightlifting shoes in the, people, I tell you what, Tommy Kono had a pair of dress shoes. He lifted in.
Yeah.
Dress shoes. He taped them on his feet with white tape. I actually, for a while, when I lived in Texas, the person that had much of his stuff, Kono's stuff, actually shipped it to me, and I kept it for a while. So for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I had Tommy Kono's old shoes that he wore in the Olympics. I'm not sure why that's important, but
no, that's very interesting.
To me, it's very cool. But they're dress shoes.
Yeah.
They're dress shoes.
Yeah.
Because shoes have no heel. Or so they have a heel, they have no cushion.
Mm-hmm.
They're solid. They have a heel and they have no cushion. And that's what you need.
Yeah, I was going to say this is kind of interesting because we're just pretty much teasing out the fact that you don't need really anything special.
No.
But there's such a market for it now.
Well, I can't say that's a bad thing.
Yeah. People are getting paid.
For some years now, I've made a living off of weightlifting.
Yeah.
By producing equipment. It's not what I love. What I love is coaching.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is seeing, you squat that 200 kilos.
Yeah.
that you're fixing to squat.
Yeah.
That's what I love. That's what I love. And if I can actually have some small part or provide some small assistance in that, that's what makes me feel good about myself and feel like my life matters. That's what does it. Not that I sold 20 bars or 100 bars or 1 bar or made money. I mean, I don't, that doesn't matter to me. That does not matter to me. I simply want to produce good lifters, and that is an all-encompassing thing and has been, since I started coaching. And so it's not like a modern thing. That's what is important to me. But no, the equipment is not really that important. A bar, even the reason I got into the bar business in like the very early part of this century, I guess, 2000s.
Yeah.
2004. That was because back then there was no Rogue. There was no, right now it's like an embarrassment of riches. You can go and buy 10 companies offering really good bars for somewhere between $300 and $400 and $500. Back then, you had 2 choices. We had purely shit bar from Walmart or Played Against Sports. It was 30 millimeters that you couldn't hook grip. It would bend or fall apart in 1 or 2 workouts. Or buy an Alico for like $1,000.
Yeah.
Now, that was it. Now, in around 2003, 4, because I have my family has been in the machine business for, my grandpa owned a welding shop, machine shop, way back in the 50s. I actually grew up welding and doing stuff like that. And I thought, my grandpa made me a bar when I was 12 or 13. And I thought, why couldn't I figure out the right steel to use and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, make bars and use the right steel so it actually lasts, and figure out a design for the sleeves that actually lasts and make bars. And so by that time, had probably clean jerk 400 pounds on like 8 different bars, models of different manufacturers, bars manufactured by 8 different people, a wide variety. So I got to take it apart and saying, how are these made? And how could you make a bar that lasts, make it cheaply? And I designed what I thought was the good points of a good one, leaving out the weak points, and came up with a really reliable bushing bar. And started selling it for like $400. I think I sold them for $429 or $39 to start with. Eventually I got down to around 400 below. It would be $350. And that's a good bar. Some of my first bars that I made are still in use and still straight. And they still have their sleeves on them, and they're not falling apart. And so, I got one bar that Donnie Shankles played clean and jerk 400 pounds like 100 times on.
Yeah.
Still spins and it's still straight. And so bars last if you take care of them.
So my question is, go ahead. Because the market is so saturated now, what do you want to do with American weightlifting that's going to, I guess, drive business to your company versus like a Rogue or an Eleiko?
Well, I still want to do the same thing that I want to do in the first place. Have a reasonable bar that will last, that feels good in your hands, good knurl, all the things that make a good bar, and that will last for 10 years, 20 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think many of the bars that are being sold satisfy that. Some do. There are people making good bars. And it kind of almost negates the need for another company
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of people making good bars. But that's a great thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing because there's more people weightlifting now. There's more people that demand now.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's more companies, and that's fine. That's fine. I don't say, okay, because Rogue's doing it, I have to just close shop. When Bill Henniger started Rogue, all of his bars came from me. All of them. He didn't have them at a warehouse. I warehouse all his stuff, his shoes, his bars, his plates, and actually drop ship for him. Somewhere out there's hundreds and hundreds of bars that came from Rogue, but I made them and I shipped them for him. They never were at Rogue. He emailed me orders. I boxed them up and I shipped them. They never went to Rogue. There's a lot of bars out there that went through that are Rogue bars. Mm-hmm. So the fact that the Rogue's here is a good thing for weightlifting. It's a good thing for weightlifting.
Yeah.
The people out there like Rogue. I don't want it to go back to one person doing bars for everybody. That's not a good thing. Mm-hmm. That's not capitalism, So if there's a need, people will satisfy that need. That goes for bars, it goes for shoes, it goes for anything else.
Yeah.
And what drives progress is 3 guys making a bar and one guy doing it a little better.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I guess that's kind of how I got on this topic initially, and kind of came to you with the idea is that there are so many coaches now, but I think to stand out as a coach, you want to offer something that's different. So there are so many different methods of programming and technique and all this.
There are.
That I'm just trying to tease out, like, what do we need to become successful?
And over time, the people that are successful will rise to the top.
Yeah. Yep. Cream rises to the top.
Yeah. And so, and I sometimes I have to keep myself from bitching about this, but there seems to be so many coaches now that are young and they think they know it all because they grew up when weightlifting was a bigger sport. As it is now. And that's a good thing. But I remember when I was the new guy, I was the guy that just came up from powerlifting, would just start to coach a young team of junior lifters from Texas, and everyone hated me. All the other coaches thought I was basically the devil because I was this ex-powerlifter that was trying to take over the sport. I had all these ideas about training. I thought I knew it all. And I wasn't really the best, most liked coach in the USA weightlifting. Because of that, Mm-hmm. So I don't want to be that person now that says all these new coaches like Joshua Gibson, they're full of shit because they're young, they're 25 years old, and they don't know shit. Because I remember when people liked it to me. And they were. And so it was deserved. But the fact is, I had a lot of new ideas. Some of which have been borne out. And they were good ideas. Mm-hmm. Just for instance here, is EMOMs.
Yeah.
That concept was introduced to me by Louis Simmons. I started to use them and quickly discovered that they worked even better for snatch and clean jerks than they did for squats and deadlifts. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really revolutionary training style for the Olympic lifts, the competition lifts. It does something no other training style does. It makes you get better as the working goes on when it comes to technique.
Yeah.
You'll start out doing it in a certain way. By the end of that EMOM, whether it be 10 lifts, 20 lifts, whatever, your technique will get slowly better the whole time. Mm-hmm. As opposed to a set of 5, where your technique gets worse as fatigue grows. With EMOMs, your technique gets better as technique grows. That's a revolutionary. That's very revolutionary. So that is one thing that I brought to sport, and you wouldn't believe how many other coaches. I mean, they thought that was the worst idea in the world. I mean, I should have copied off emails of people that were more well-known coaches.
Yeah.
Were like, that's the stupidest thing ever. That is totally the opposite of what you should be trying for weightlifting. For weightlifting, you want to start each lift with as free from fatigue as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to train under fatigue is a dumb idea. It will just cause you to do worse. The lifts will get all screwed up. It's a bad idea. It can go on and on and on. How stupid that was. Part of it was because it came from Louis Simmons. Weightlifting coaches have something against Louis for some reason. And anything that comes from him has to be bad. But when I was the person with new ideas, like imams, people reacted very badly and said I was stupid. I was ridiculous. That's the dumbest idea ever. And where are new ideas going to come from? They're going to come from people like you. People that have a new idea, probably that are young. New ideas rarely come from guys that are 40. They rarely come from guys that are 40 or 50 or 60. They always come from guys in their 20s that are new to the sport, that bring into the sport some viewpoint that is unknown. And they come up with something new.
So, Glenn, if for new coaches looking to get into weightlifting and create a name for themselves, besides just producing great athletes, which is what you really have to do, what advice would you give to them to help them kind of survive the hardships of the first 5 years, 10 years?
Gosh, I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
I would say if you really, really are going to be a great coach, you're going to do it because you can't become a great coach without a deep, deep love for the sport. There's nothing else that will help you become a great coach and will allow you to become a great coach besides that. And if you have a great love for the sport, you're not going to be discouraged because some asshole thinks you're an idiot or makes fun of your ideas. Or, because I remember when the same people that were saying that I was the dumbest person ever for introducing imams are now using them.
Yeah.
I guess. And so.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, but if you are a young coach, you're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And your ideas, if they're good, are going to be recognized eventually. It'll take a few years, but they'll get recognized because that's the way the world works. If you do a good job, you get recognized for it eventually.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I guess that just reminded me of what you were talking about earlier when you brought up Seb and how he continues to persist and throughout times when he's not making PRs. I think it's the same thing kind of for a coach. You just continue to persist. And the love of the sport drives you.
One of the things that really has made me a fan of Seb is because when I was starting out, I thought of every single excuse I could think of to interact with guys like Gail Hatch, Dennis Sneathen, John Thrush, because they were the coaches that hadn't lifted on the world team. They were the coaches at nationals. They were always coaching a bunch of lifters at nationals. Good lifters. And I used every excuse in the book to pick their brains. I tried to make myself around them, conversing with them, talking to them, every way I could. And John Coffey, I mean, and so I would say, if you, on the one hand, stick to your guns and realize that will eventually bring something to sport. You will. But before you do, and in the meantime, you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get arrogant and thinking, I have now coached one national champion. I know it all.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to know it all.
I kind of have this goal, and I guess people always ask me, like, when do you think you'll be successful? Like, what would you have to have done to be successful? And I kind of look at you and Caleb Ward. Like, I would love to develop someone from their first day in the sport up to the point of becoming a national champion or American record holder. Like, to me, that's kind of the ultimate goal as a coach, is to fully develop an athlete.
It is.
Not to adopt someone from another coach and then already have someone that's extremely talented and extremely good, but to take someone from rock bottom, zero, and then build them all the way up is just...
You know why that's so hard to do? There's a reason.
Why is that?
Because the coach and the methods and the interactions that work great for a 12-year-old beginner
Mm-hmm.
are not the same coach interactions and methods that work great for an advanced athlete.
Yeah.
So you rarely get, I'm very lucky to have had someone like Caleb and others, you know, like Donnie Schenkel. He had done weightlifting for 3 months when I started coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Got out of the Marine Corps, was at a gym in California with Bergener. Bergener called me and said, this guy needs somewhere to go, you know, somewhere he can afford to live, with a coach that's going to, you know, coach him and deal with him, and also a chance to finish school,
Mm-hmm.
which never happened, but yet that was the idea. But so I had to teach Johnny how to snatch and how to clean a jerk, you know. So, and it went on to the point where he was on the world team. But those things will happen to you. But it takes a different interaction, a different knowledge set to coach someone as a beginner as opposed to an intermediate or an advanced lifter.
Mm-hmm.
It takes very different things as a coach. So that most people don't really have the chance to ever have that happen. I'm very lucky, but I had the chance. Very lucky. I hope you are too.
Yeah.
But it's great when it does happen. It's very rare, but it's great when it does happen. I mean, it's wonderful to have that, you know, and I remember when Donnie actually, so we're talking about Donnie now, I remember when he actually beat the lifts that I had been doing as an athlete prior to coaching him.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember his first 171 snatch, you know, because my best was 170.
Mm-hmm.
And his first ever 211 clean and jerk, because my best was 210. So actually, that was my goal throughout most of my career, to actually find a person that can beat my lifts. It finally happened at Cal Strength with Donnie. That was after we moved from Texas to Cal Strength. And it finally happened. But those things are things that, you know, if you're a coach, you're going to realize how special that is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how special that is. But it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. I guess I'm always
Joe Mills had a saying that you might have heard me say before, but it fits with the aspect of it takes a long time to understand a sport.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time to become a good coach. Joe Mills said, I can tell you everything you need to know about weightlifting, or everything I know about weightlifting. I can tell you everything I know about weightlifting. But in 10 minutes, I can tell you everything I need to know. Then it'll take you 10 years to understand what I said.
Yeah.
And that is the sport in a nutshell. You can explain it very easily and very simply. Picking a damn bar up over your head, putting it down. It's not a complicated sport. It's not. But the nuances are so huge that it will take you 10 years at least to understand a sport. I can think of many times I really thought, didn't actually say it. I wasn't quite that arrogant, but I thought, I know it all now. I know what there is to know about weightlifting. I know the sport. I know the sport. I understand the sport. understand how to coach, understand, but I didn't know it. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
When I start learning, I'll probably quit, but I have a long ways to go. I think when Joe Mills said that, he was understating it. It's hard to actually feel like the more you learn about weightlifting, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not past that point yet. As I learn more and more about the sport, more and more nuances of the sport, I start realizing how much there is to know, left to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a never-ending process. Never-ending process. That's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah. So do you feel like, I know you always talk about kind of studying frequency, but do you have any other questions that you kind of think about where you feel like there's a gap in your knowledge? Or is it just kind of like when you kind of come into an experience or a situation and you kind of pull something from that and add it to your arsenal, it's not so much like thinking beforehand and then developing an opinion after the fact?
I think that when you talk about things you don't know,
mm-hmm.
I can't really tell you what that is because I don't know it.
Yeah, true.
I mean, how do I say, okay, I don't know this. I don't know this, that whatever this is there actually exists.
Yeah.
But I learn all the time. I learn every lifter that I've coached has taught me something. Everyone. It might be something really simple. It might be something that's really profound. They've all taught me something.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people left out there who have something to teach me. A lot of people.
So,
and I haven't realized, I haven't seen a slowing down of my learning curve
mm-hmm.
yet. I think my first lifter that I coached up to a national meet was Richard Mendoza, who went to the American Open in 1996. I mean, we're a fair amount beyond that now.
Yeah.
And I had coached prior to that. That was my first coaching assignment. I mean, but that was the first time I actually got a lifter to a national event. He was 17 and qualified for the American Open, which ain't bad.
No.
Even today, that's not bad. As a senior lifter, not as a senior, as the American Open. But I'm not sure how long I'd coached before that. I haven't really. You don't ever know what to write down as a milestone because the milestone hadn't happened yet. But we're in 2018 right now. And I feel like I've learned as much last year and this year as I have in 2007 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn.
Yeah, and we were talking about how many people you have on the Pendlay WOD, so I can only imagine when you have like 190 people submitting videos and you're writing programming for them, it's a lot of opportunities to learn as well. Just with that sheer exposure to lifters.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's kind of funny, but you mentioned Tyler Barnes because he just exploded in the last couple of weeks. He's got a long way to go. He has to learn how to snatch, which he really hasn't yet. He's snatching decent weights now, but he hadn't really learned how to snatch. He might be upset I say that, but if Tyler, you listen to this, you don't learn that. You will. But I just responded to one of his posts a day ago, maybe last night, about he's upping his squat.
Mm-hmm.
And he's exploding on a squat. I think his squat was like 465 or something stupid like that when he started on the Pendlay WOD.
Yeah.
It's 505 now.
For a triple.
For a triple, yeah. So his single is probably, who knows what his single is.
Yeah.
I assume his single is going to go to 600 at least before he slows down.
Yeah.
But he's at this point where he's getting so euphoric because the weights are going up so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like he does a PR single or PR triple, and it's just he knows he can do more, so he just does another one.
Yeah.
An extra set and does more. And I said, that's going to slow down, but more importantly, do you realize how much you're going to have to eat and sleep to recover from all those heavy squats, those extra heavy squats? And that's the one where I have about him is he's going to squat himself to death.
Yeah.
And so he'll come to a point where the clean and jerk kind of stops going up because he's not recovered.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as long as you're increasing the squat, it's a good thing. It's always a good thing. But I think people like him are in danger of overemphasis on the squat just because it's so in love with that putting increased sweat in the bar.
Do you think there's ever going to be a point where he would need to back off the squat and just let it kind of sit for a while at whatever it's at so the other lifts can catch up? Or is it kind of just push the squat, just de-emphasize it a bit?
Oh, he's already at that point probably.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing individual programming.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing not doing the Pendlay WOD really, the strong 5 or strong 4 or strong 3. And I've already kind of backed off the amount of squatting he's doing.
Yeah.
Because you can't ever squat too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to get too strong. More strength never hurts. But it's the work you do to get more strength that hurts.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing all the squatting, that's less recoverability to recover from clean and jerks and snatches. As long as he can keep upping his squat with 2 workouts a week and kind of a limited volume, there's no reason why not to squat more.
Right.
But he's not going to go on a Fifth Element type program where he squats 69 times a week.
Yeah. So
I mean, he doesn't need that.
Out of curiosity, since you coached so long in person, and you had athletes that would train under you every single day, multiple times a day, and now you have an online team, what's been the biggest learning curve for you transitioning from one to the other? And like, is there any advice you can kind of give to someone that's an online coach?
There's more differences to that than I could even fathom before I did, because it's all to do with the generation that we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
Folks now, because of Facebook, feel like they need instant feedback. It's a challenge to get people to think for themselves without just relying on a coach to tell them what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge. As you already talked about, my opinion is that as a coach, you should be giving athletes less and less instruction as their career progresses.
Right.
So when Caleb was 12, I told him every move to make, every lift, gave me feedback on every lift. By the time he was 13 or 14, it was less. By the time he broke the American record, I felt like I had already taught him to lift.
Mm-hmm.
That had already happened. That was 19. I was saying he'd been lifting 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he was already getting way less feedback from me. And I firmly believe that because a weightlifter, when you're on the platform, you're on there by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't developed some self-sufficiency for that time, that's a shame. You don't want to. I see all the time lifters at nationals or at meets, not at nationals, lifters at meets that do a snatch, walk on the platform, and hold their hands up and say, "What do I do?"
Yeah.
And I've had people say that to me, but they're almost like, I think it was I think I stayed with the pole too long. I think I stayed with the pole too long. So what do you think? Or you can just see in their eyes by their questioning that they know what they did, but they're still asking for just to support their opinion.
Yeah.
But when I see somebody walk off the platform and just have no clue, what do? They do a miss. Why do miss? Why do miss? That just rankles me.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know, if you have no clue what you did wrong, your coach is not doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
You should have some clue what happened before you ask. You should have some clue. Because the coach needs to support the athlete learning to think for themselves and learning to know what they did wrong, to feel it. Mm-hmm. How do you fix problems without any knowledge of feeling, without any knowledge of self-awareness about what you did? You have to develop a self-awareness of your body and what the movements were and what the movements might have been wrong. That can't be overemphasized, I don't think.
And that just takes time. I get people all the time that ask me, hey, how do I get a better bench arch, or how do I navigate my knees in the pull better? And it's just just keep doing it. And over time, you'll be able to tell when you're doing it properly or when you're not. But I can't give you this fix all right away.
You know what? That answer frustrates people.
It does.
It frustrates people. But it's like, well, welcome to the fucking sport. It's a frustrating sport. I mean, it's not easy, and it's going to take you a long time to understand it. And even if you have somebody, be it me, be it somebody else, that's willing to sit there and tell you everything, that's not going to help you.
Right. It's superficial knowledge.
Yeah, you have to think of things yourself. You have to understand it. Me just telling you doesn't help you understand. Mm-hmm. There's a difference in knowing something and understanding it. And so that takes time. So Joe Mills quote, it'll take you 10 years to understand it. Yeah. You can't short circuit that time frame. Mm-mm. If something takes 10 years to understand, it takes 10 years to understand. There's no way you can short circuit that time period. There's just no way.
And it's kind of the same thing, the same idea with mobility. Like, people spend their entire life moving a certain way or lifting a certain way, and then they want to go from that to a perfect bottom position. It's but your entire life was spent not developing that. So that's assuming it's going to happen overnight or with one training session is just stupid.
Yeah.
It's going to take not equally as long, but a long amount of time just getting in the bottom and hammering it before it sticks.
For sure. And that's one of the most frustrating things about teaching a snatch. You know what really frustrates me when I try to teach someone the snatch, the new lifter?
What's that?
They don't want to spend any time in the bottom.
Yeah.
They catch it, they go down, and they immediately come back up. Mm-hmm. Get used to that position. Sit down there for a second and feel around down there. Mm-hmm. Just move your body, move your hips to the left, to the right, feel it out, and then come up. Now, a lot of people just don't want to do that. You're never going to be comfortable there unless you spend time there.
And I see that in the split too. And that's really bad when people try and recover too quickly.
Right. That kind of, in a nutshell, encompasses my whole method of teaching the lifts. Whole method. I do personally a top-down method where you learn from the hip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You learn from the knee, then you learn from the floor. And the whole time we're learning the snatch, every lift, I want them to get to those positions, backwards and forwards. So once we go from the hip, you pick the bar up, you put it in your hip, you bend your knees, and get that power position with your spine, your back in the right position, your knees are correct degree of flexion, mm-hmm. and you sit there for a second or two. And then you pull, explode, and catch. But what people don't want to do is they don't want to sit there.
Right.
you don't want to take those 2 seconds. Okay, I'm in the correct position, position 1. Now I explode. I catch the bar.
And
they don't sit there for the 2 seconds it takes to embed that position in their motor memory, the muscle memory.
Right.
Then we go to position 2 at the knees. So we're going to start position 1, take a couple seconds there to get used to it. We're going to lower the bar to the knees. And we're going to take a couple seconds. We're going to stop there. Stop. Okay. Now, start pulling up.
Mm-hmm.
Start extending the hip. But the most important thing is taking that 1 or 2 seconds there. People don't want to do that. They want to lower it and reverse direction immediately and pull up. If you think about it, if you only get that position for a split second, how much extra time do you spend in that position?
Yeah, very little.
A split second plus a split second plus 9 other split seconds is not much time.
Yeah.
And not too many seconds. But if you take 2 or 3 seconds at that position every time, on the way down, on the way up, you'll have been eventually accumulated a fair amount of seconds in that position. From the floor, the knee, and the hip. And after a training session, you've had a lot of time in that position, and you've learned that position. And that makes the learning process so much faster.
Right. And I don't want to just like pick on the athletes, because as a coach for me, it's also frustrating, and I feel a little impatient when I watch someone who doesn't know how to stay balanced in the pole, and it seems like they're always rocking forward and backward, and it happens session after session after session. Like, I just want it to be instantly fixed, but there's also some patience that needs to be had on both sides of it. It's just allowing a problem to resolve itself over time and not being fixed immediately.
Do you know, this is kind of, I'm going to get off topic here for a minute, but you know what I think the worst display of coaching I've ever seen?
What is it?
I'm not any individual person, but if you go into the warm-up room at Nationals,
mm-hmm.
every coach back there is trying to show off to the other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
By picking apart every lift, whoever the coaching does. So if I was coaching you at Nationals, and there were 8 other coaches hanging out, which there always are, that would be me saying, Joshua, you were a little forward.
Mm-hmm.
You pull a little too long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
9 different cues to make sure. It doesn't make sense to give you those cues.
No.
But what I'm trying to do is show off the other coaches and demonstrate to the other coaches that I saw that I know what just happened. And for the athlete, it sucks.
Yeah.
Because he's getting a totally different coach than normal.
Mm-hmm.
Because every coach wants to be the first one of the group to see and to demonstrate they saw that mistake. That's the worst time in the world to be an athlete, is when the coaches are trying to show off for each other.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens at Nationals. Exactly what happens.
Well, I had a similar experience because I haven't coached at a national meet, but I was at a local meet a couple weekends ago, and it's kind of the same thing. They had like 3 coaches from the same club, and I just heard so many cues thrown out and so many corrections, and it's like, if you spend enough time preparing for the meet, just let the lifter lift the weight. I mean, it's a warm-up. You don't need to really correct a warm-up.
Right. You know, I'm sure I've done it before.
Yeah, I think we all have.
Sure I have. I'd like to think I've done it less and less as I've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I have, actually. Because I've written blogs about it. Yeah. But it's such a, you know, it's such a persistent thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coaches overcoaching. And I've said this a million times, that the longer I've coached, the less I say,
Mm-hmm.
the fewer cues I use for the lifter. I'm 100% sure that when I was, well, so say in 1996, I used a lot of cues.
Mm-hmm.
In 2000, 2003, I used less cues. In 2010, I used way less. 2018, I think I used less too.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's just, you realize that all those cues are not doing anything good.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. And, this is a slightly different topic, but it's the same. When I was a younger coach, more inexperienced coach, for the longest time, I thought, if a lifter does something wrong, tell him, give him a cue.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that. The longer I've coached, the more I've realized that lifter is probably going to catch that on their own. They're probably not going to make the same mistake again. They're going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to learn on their own. I don't like to cue somebody until I've seen the same mistake 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Because by then, you know that it's actually a mistake.
Now, have you noticed that typically occurs more with beginners and intermediates, whereas like maybe advanced athletes are able to correct it more quickly on their own?
Yeah, a little bit. But what I've noticed more, and I'm sure even you know this, and you're gonna understand what this. So I say it: the mistakes you make get smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
As you advance as a lifter.
Yep.
That doesn't mean the mistakes aren't there. As an inexperienced lifter, they're there, and they're big, and more so than being big, they're inconsistent.
Yeah.
You may be too far on your toes this lift. Without any cue, you're likely to be too far on your heels the next lift. So as long as you as a lifter are changing what you do every fucking lift, why would a cue help?
Right.
It wouldn't. It's going to hurt. You need to see something consistently before you say this to the lifter. Now, by the time you watch them train over the last few months, and you see it in the meet, you might say something because that lifter is consistently doing that wrong. Mm-hmm. You're going to catch it quick and say, okay, you're a little too forward now. And that's a good thing. But if the lifter's still a beginner and they're making a different mistake every time, why mention it? Wait till the mistake solidifies and becomes consistent, and then say, you're too far forward.
So Glenn, I have a question. I have a lifter who it seems like we'll correct an issue and then it'll just come right back. She tends to jump forward and get her hips moving horizontally. And I feel like we can correct it and she'll lift just amazingly. And then the next time she comes in, I'll watch her warm-ups and it's the same thing. And it's, for me, I don't know how we can cure it.
The reason is she's doing something prior to the forward jump that caused the forward jump.
Yeah.
Something in a way, she's coming off the ground, pulling past her knees. Something occurs earlier in the lift than the obvious is causing the obvious.
Yeah.
So I have no clue because I haven't seen a lifter. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Well, we've been doing pauses off the floor, and I feel like we can solve the problem, but for some reason, it seems like every time we come back in, it just comes back. Like it almost seems like it'll just never go away. I mean, I'm sure it will eventually, but.
Well, is there a mistake at the knee?
Yeah, I honestly, I think that the pull is just either too vertical off the floor, it just comes out slightly. So I'm really trying to get the knees to push back, but then the chest drops.
Okay, the bar goes forward off the floor?
Yeah.
Okay, that's wrong to start with.
Yeah.
The bar has to go up and back off the floor.
Yeah.
Now, vertical is okay, but vertical is almost
It's borderline for me.
It's almost, it's borderline. So the ideal position to be back off the floor.
Yeah.
Most good lifters solidify their taking in some way where they go back on the floor an inch, a half inch, something, to where the vertical plane the bar's in at the knee is slightly back from where it was off the floor.
Yeah.
So if you could project the bar upward from the floor, vertical upward, that would be a slight forward position from where it is at the knee.
Okay.
So, I mean, that might be the whole thing right there if you're just going slightly forward off the floor.
Yeah. So she has like very long femurs, so she has a very long upper leg. So if you were to try and correct something, would you like recommend for a lifter with longer legs to take a wider stance or to set their hips a little higher?
Where's your balance point when she pulls off the floor, and where's your balance point at the knee?
Well, I'm going to assume that she's balanced like mid-foot off the floor and then moving towards the heels at the knee. But
try to coach her to be further back.
Okay.
Well, to be more towards the toe off the floor.
Yeah. And
go back at the knee.
Okay.
So longer femored lifters and just taller lifters in general, but longer femored especially, usually need to have more transfer of weight on their foot.
Oh, gotcha.
During a pull. Now it's kind of funny, but the Chinese have kind of gotten everybody to doing this whole pull where the weight never moves.
Yeah, that's a big thing now.
Yeah, but I think that works for Chinese lifters. Why? Because they're all short.
Yeah.
They're all short. And they have short legs and long backs.
Mm-hmm.
Spine is long, femurs are short. The taller you are or the more femur you have, the more weight transfer is going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So coming from more forward, ending at more rearward. Since I don't know what liver you're talking about, and I have no idea what she looks like.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, I can't really refine it beyond that. But
yeah,
if a person you've noticed they have longer femurs.
Mm-hmm.
Try to have more weight transfer during a pull.
Okay.
I bet you that will help.
Okay, because I noticed when we put her on mats and had her hang her toes off, it would pretty much cure the problem. But when we took the mats away, I don't know why it wouldn't stick.
I think the trait transfer thing is going to help.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. All right, Glenn. So I kind of have a little summary here as far as like the initial topic we were discussing, old school versus new school. So I feel like the biggest differences in old school and new school weightlifting, they don't necessarily affect like the genetic elite. I feel like those lifters are already going to do well. But what they do allow is for average athletes to perform at a bit of a higher level. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that. And I think that we have gotten as a society and as a sport to the point where people, and this is like something you could say at any point in time,
mm-hmm.
but now is no different than any point. We've always get away from the basics.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
The basics are getting stronger. And I don't know how we got sidetracked off of this. The basics are getting stronger and getting better at the lifts.
Mm-hmm.
That's basic. That requires pushing up your squat and your deadlift and drilling the lifts. That's old school. That's what Joe Mills did with lifters in the 1960s. Drill the lifts. And that goes really well into EMOMs because what he did with lifters was very similar to EMOMs.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to Gary Valentine, who actually was coached by Joe Mills, many times about this. He used it wasn't technically EMOMs, but he was trying to get lifters lift with about a minute rest.
Mm-hmm.
Do a snatch, catch your breath, rechalk your hands, shake your arms a little bit. Your coach says something, you say, okay, I'll do that, and then take another snatch. Somewhere around the minute.
Mm-hmm.
And start light with around 75%, 70%, and slowly move up until you couldn't do it right anymore. That's a hell of a lot of lifts with 70 and 80%, or 65 and 80%, 60 and 80%, something like that. In that middle range, 70%-ish. A lot of quick lifts. That's drilling technique. That worked in the 1960s for Joe Mills, and it still works now.
Yeah.
And I feel like the whole EMOM thing that I felt was such a revolutionary thing is only going back to what Joe Mills did in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
We call it EMOMs now, or I called the EMOMs originally. Kind of, what's a good word? Kind of institutionalized it.
Yeah.
With a set program, 1 minute. But it's basically what Joe Mills did in 1965.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess a lot of people think it might be new school, but the only reason they think that is because they aren't educated on what weightlifting was like in the 60s and 70s.
People think if it didn't happen on the internet, it doesn't happen.
Right.
It's right. It's right. And EMOMs were done in the 60s by Joe Mills.
Yeah.
You know? And they work then.
They work now.
Stronger, and they work now.
Yep.
They work great now. And so that's a very good training method, but it's very old school.
Yeah.
Very, very old school. But then the whole getting stronger thing. You know how long things like 5-5 have been around? Since the 50s.
Yeah.
That's still my go-to program when I first start coaching someone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I first start trying to get somebody to squat up, that's what we do.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing, and that's as old school as you can get.
I actually had
Park was winning bodybuilding shows.
Yeah.
In 1955, maybe, I don't know, something like that. Doing 5-5.
Yep.
To build muscle and get big. Bench press 500 pounds. Big and strong. You know, big and strong and knows how to lift are weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
There's two aspects to sport. Get strong as hell and get good as can be in the lifts.
Yep.
Skill in the lifts and strength. That's what makes a weightlifter.
Yeah.
Neither one of them is more important than the other.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both necessary to be good.
And a lot of people think the whole max squat every day is like a unique method, but I feel like there have been lifters in the past that have gone into the gym and just maxed out a squat and gone home and came back and done it again. So that's something that's been around for a very long amount of time too.
Of course, there was a weightlifter, a power lifter named Jim Williams, a big, huge black guy, and he was a hell of a lifter. In the, I'm thinking 70s, might have been the 60s, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
He had that workout. His sole training for the bench press was to max out like 4 or 5 times in a week, every day.
Yeah.
Just max out. And about once or twice a week, he'd feel good. And he'd decide to go up. He'd usually make at least 600 pounds.
Jeez.
You know? And every once in a while, he'd feel particularly good that day. He'd feel refreshed. He'd go up to near 700, 650, 675, 700.
Mm-hmm.
Other days, he might stop at 600. Once in a while, I'd probably stop at 550. But that was his workout. Play it by ear, go by feel, not programmed at all. Just maxed out. Felt good, challenged his best. Didn't feel good, stop early.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Bulgarians.
Yeah.
Their whole training program was made on going up on the squat, on the front squat, and squat to a max. Several times a day. No assistance whatsoever. Front squat, snatch, clean and jerk, but the squatting was all maximal.
Yeah.
Maxing out. And it worked. And so really there's nothing new in training, and people that I shy away from saying EMOM is revolutionary because they're not.
Yeah.
Or maxing out all the time is revolutionary because it's not. It's all been done. Mm-hmm. Now, hopefully we can think slightly better ways to do it. We can refine it. That's possible. But there really isn't anything revolutionary in the sport of weightlifting. It's an old sport. We rediscover old things.
Yeah.
We don't invent them. That's why I've never, ever made a huge deal out of me coming up with EMOMs. Because I rediscovered them. I discovered them I got introduced to them from Louis Simmons, who rediscovered them from Joe Mills. Mm-hmm. It's not new. And it's certainly not CrossFit.
Yeah.
CrossFitters have gone crazy with EMOMs and they love them. That's great. They've rediscovered an old method. Mm-hmm. And so, but there's really nothing. There's very little that you can think of this is new now.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of close out that topic. Is we don't really invent anything. We just kind of rediscover. I think that's a great way to phrase it. So, Glenn, kind of before we wrap up, do you have any last words on it, or any last questions or anything?
I really don't.
Okay.
I really don't.
Well, thank you for the conversation.
This sport is great, and the fact that it's gotten popular right now is wonderful. That's great. Mm-hmm. I mean, weightlifting is a wonderful sport. It's a great sport. Mm-hmm. I always was in the 90s and early 2000s for CrossFit. It was always a mystery to me why more people weren't interested in this great sport, because for me it was just genetic.
Yeah.
I came from the womb wanting to be stronger.
Yeah.
That was always had a huge draw to me, just being strong.
Yeah.
That pushed me into powerlifting and then weightlifting. And weightlifting is the by far more interesting sport than powerlifting.
I agree.
Powerlifting is one-dimensional. Weightlifting is multi-dimensional. Mm-hmm. Powerlifting is, you can get bored with powerlifting, but in weightlifting it's impossible to be bored. It's so many facets of sport. But it's always been a mystery to me how other people didn't just look at weightlifting and say, what a great sport.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there are people now that are excited about getting strong and putting bigger weights over their head is so awesome. It's so neat.
Yeah.
It's like the world's coming around to a more reasonable viewpoint on the worth of this wonderful sport.
Yeah. I mean, what I personally love about it is the fact that, outside of the gym, people are differentiated by how much money they make, their social status. But when you're training with someone, you really don't know about any of that. It's just who can lift the most weight, who's the strongest, which is something you have to work towards, and you're not necessarily given. So it's more of like an equal playing field. And I really love the camaraderie that's built. And then when you leave, you go your separate ways. But in the gym, it's just who's the best for the day, who's the strongest.
Right.
So.
Yep. Weightlifting's awesome.
Yeah, it is. So awesome that we both have podcasts dedicated to weightlifting. So. It
is cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I always love getting feedback from listeners about how much they appreciate the fact that they have something to listen to while they're not training, because I feel like that's all we do is we try and surround ourselves with weightlifting. So when we're not in the gym, we need something else.
Right. Definitely. Definitely.
Yep. So Glenn, I want to thank you for coming on and giving me some really good ideas and some really good discussion. And I'll just
thanks for having me, Joshua.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
No problem. And I'll just do your plugs for you. I mean, AmericanWeightlifting.com if you need a barbell or equipment. You can sign up for the Pendlay WOD and join the online team. He offers a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day a week program. He also offers individualized programming. And then if you need to contact Glenn directly, it's glennpendlay@gmail.com. Is that correct, Glenn?
And well, that's correct. And I'm going to throw one little last thing in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please, if you're trying to get a hold of me, do not message me on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter. Facebook is not really a big deal, but people seem to have gotten the idea that missing someone on Instagram or Twitter is okay. It's not. Just email. Email works fine. I can't figure out Instagram or Twitter, either one.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly realize I've got like 9 unread messages on Instagram, and I can't find them and then look at them and answer them, and it takes me forever. So I periodically realize I have like 9 messages on there that have been waiting for a month. So if you message me on Instagram, I might not get back to you for a long time because I haven't seen the message on Instagram. Because I have no idea how to do that. So anyway.
And then the last thing, you also have those lectures coming up overseas, right?
Those are going to be fun. Yes. Ireland. There's a university there that is doing a seminar. I don't know quite what they call it, master class or something, but they're doing a talk, a lecture. It's a University of Santana College.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and so I'm really looking forward to that because I'm doing one lecture for the community people. If people want to come to the lecture, and then there's another lecture just for the graduate students and faculty. And so I really plan on that, both lectures being great, but it's going to be nice being able to speak only to a group of students of the sport, basically, students of physiology, who I can kind of do a little bit different lecture for.
Yeah.
Because they're a little bit more knowledgeable about physiology. So we're going to, that's going to be fun because I can't really do that when I do USAW courses or Pendlay courses.
So a question I'm sure a lot of people have that may not be able to make it. Are these going to be recorded and then released online? Do you know?
You know what? I don't know. The one at Santana, the college, I expect that maybe it will.
Yeah.
But that would be their deal.
Yeah.
Because I'm being paid to do the lecture. I would assume that they're the ones that are going to get any commercial value out of it.
Yeah.
So I think there might be something available, but I wouldn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah. Well, as someone that would love to see it, I know they might have a market for that. So hopefully they do. And
maybe so.
Yeah. And guys, thanks for listening. Guys and gals, thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go like, share, subscribe, leave a review, all of that. And thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast.